Quick question, if you had to guess, what percent of the federal budget goes to foreign aid, helping other countries? Take a second. Got a number in your head? Multiple independent surveys, run by different research groups, keep finding the same answer. Most Americans guess somewhere around 25%, a quarter of the entire budget. The real number is about 1%. That's not a rounding error, that's one of the largest gaps between what people believe and what's actually true in all of public opinion research. And here's the interesting part. When people are told the real number, most of them, across every political party, say the U.S. should be spending the same or more. The outrage was never really about foreign aid, it was about not knowing where the money actually goes, so let's fix that. Here's where $1 of your federal tax money actually ends up. In 2025, the U.S. government spent about $7 trillion and collected about $5.3 trillion in taxes. That gap, the difference between the two, is the deficit, and it's a real and growing problem. But it's a separate conversation from where the money that is collected actually goes. So let's focus on the spending side. You can think of federal spending as three very different buckets. Bucket 1, mandatory spending. This is money the government is legally required to pay out every year. No vote needed, because Congress already wrote it into law decades ago. This is the biggest bucket by far, about 60% of everything spent. The two giants inside it are Social Security, which alone is about 22% of the entire federal budget, and Medicare, health coverage for people 65 and older, at around 14%. Add Medicaid, which covers healthcare for lower-income Americans, and these three programs alone account for more than a third of every dollar the government spends. Bucket 2. Discretionary spending. This is the part Congress actually debates and votes on fresh every single year, about 27% of the budget. Roughly half of this goes to national defense. The other half funds almost everything else people associate with government: education, scientific research, national parks, the FBI, disaster relief, and yes, foreign aid, which, again, is a tiny sliver even within this smaller bucket. Bucket 3, and this one surprises people: interest on the national debt. The government has borrowed so much money over the decades that just paying interest on that debt now costs about $970 billion a year, 14% of the entire budget. To put that in perspective, interest payments are now larger than the entire defense budget and larger than Medicare. It's the fastest growing piece of the whole pie because the more debt piles up, the more interest it generates, the same way credit card debt snowballs if you only pay the minimum. So who's actually getting all this money? Individual people mostly. About a third of every dollar goes out as Social Security checks to retirees and people with disabilities. Another huge chunk pays hospitals, doctors, and insurers through Medicare and Medicaid. Grants sent to state and local governments fund things like schools, roads, and public transit in your own city. And defense spending pays for the military, from service members' salaries to equipment and bases. Here's the honest, sometimes uncomfortable part. People often assume the solution to a shrinking budget is simply cutting waste, and there genuinely is some. But federal auditors' own estimates put improper payments and identified waste at a small fraction of total spending, nowhere near enough to meaningfully shrink a $7 trillion budget on its own. The actual big drivers, an aging population needing more Social Security and Medicare, and a growing pile of debt generating more interest, are structural, not the result of some hidden pot of misused money. That's a harder, less satisfying story than cut the waste, but it's the one the data actually supports. None of this is about whether the government should spend more or less on any of this. That's a real debate, and reasonable people land in very different places on it. This is just about knowing what the pie chart actually looks like before you have that debate. Because right now, a lot of the loudest arguments about government spending are being fought over numbers that simply aren't true, and you can't fix a problem, or even agree on whether it is a problem, if you're arguing about the wrong picture entirely. Understanding where a dollar actually goes doesn't require a finance degree, it just requires someone willing to lay out the real numbers before the debate starts. That's the whole idea behind this channel.